There's a very interesting theory that goes around in regards to mental health, and that is that mental health issues can actually be as a result of generational trauma, also known as epigenetics. Epigenetics studies the DNA to find out how trauma that has been transgenerational affects people at the end of the family tree. So what that means is if you had, for example, you're a descendant of slavery, how does that affect your current mental health? Are there any markers that show up in your family and in your family's ancestors that could affect your mental health and outlook? And the answer is yes, there is. It's very interesting that people like to say African Americans are, they fulfill the stereotypes of not being motivated, not wanting to work, which is not true. We saw when there was a shutdown between 2020 and 2022, the statistics show that African Americans were leading the charge when it came to opening their own businesses during that time. It was something around the area of 1.2 million new businesses were started during that time frame. So the laziness meme is not true, number one. And number two, there's a lot of generational trauma that is expressed in chronic preventable illnesses. For example, high blood pressure. When you are constantly under the strain of racism or racist acts, then your blood pressure is going to be elevated. If it is something that's happening over a long period of time, then guess what? You have chronic high blood pressure. If it's something that is transgenerational, then it's something that's passed down. And that's why so many people say that, well, I have high blood pressure. My mother had it. My grandmother had it. My great grandmother had it. That is an example of transgenerational illnesses that could be a factor when it comes to epigenetics and generational trauma. I wanted to look at this person. Let's take a look at this clip and then we'll come back. The name I want you to keep in mind, there are two names I want you to keep in mind. One is Robbie Robinson and the other one is Arnold Schwarzenegger. Take a look at this clip and we'll be back.
Arnold is the star of Pumping Iron, but Robbie is in the gym training. Yet they tell Robbie, don't flex, Robbie. You might make Arnold look bad.
I flex anyway.
You flex anyway.
It was just a time period. I just wasn't used to that. I'm have this position where I'm actually in a movie and I'm hearing people telling me, don't flex, just walk across the floor. I flexed anyway. It caused a lot of bad feelings and stuff to the whole movie. Mm-hmm. I said things like, being black you're not supposed to say, but I said it anyway. Mm-hmm. And I thought, why not have a voice? I'm a part of this whole thing. I have to say something. I have to voice my own opinion. They didn't like that.
I mean, how can you make the fifth step of the ladder when you didn't make the first?
I'm already with you.
I think that Robbie's gonna be the great black hope.
Robbie Robinson is almost 80 years old. If you look at the man's body and conditioning, you would never guess that he is that age. He still maintains his muscle definition and his strength at almost 80 years of age. After 8 decades of life, this man is still extremely strong. One of the things of this story is, before we talk about Arnold Schwarzenegger, let's talk about the person that brought Arnold Schwarzenegger to the United States, or at least had a hand in that, and that was Joe Weider. Joe Weider was the International Federation bodybuilder creator. He created an entire industry around bodybuilding, and that's where Arnold Schwarzenegger really got a global exposure as the person to beat when it came to bodybuilding. Now, I'm also a personal trainer, certified personal trainer. So I do have some interest in bodybuilding, not to that extent, but it's very interesting to see the dynamics between Robbie Robinson back in 1977 at the creation of the movie called Pumping Iron. That was Arnold Schwarzenegger's big introduction to the world as the leading person to beat when it came to bodybuilding. Robbie Robinson was told on set not to flex because he would make Arnold look bad. That's one thing. The second thing is the fact that Joe Weider his treatment of Robbie Robinson when Robbie Robinson was approached to be the figure, the body, the symbol of Joe Weider's industry company. He went in there in good faith, and guess what? They did a Uno Reverso card on him and made sure that his head was removed and Joe Weider's head was placed on Robbie Robinson's body.
What happened? How did your body get under Joe Weider's head?
I'm listening to this person want to create my physique
Yes.
and make it the monument of his company. I thought it was a great idea. It had this big hunk of clay on the table, and all I had to do was cross my arm and flex. And when they got through with it, when they got finished it, we were both sitting there, both our mouths were hanging open because they had the whole image, my hair, everything, Fu Manchu Mustang, everything was on that bus.
Wow.
And then we was invited to the grand opening.
You said it was like a blue veil or something?
It was a blue veil. The whole thing was over it. Weider came up and says, "Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Chef here to unveil the bus." When he flipped it off, everybody was like, wow. He had taken my head off and put his head on my body and made it the monument for the whole company all over the world.
To this day.
To this day.
You know, what's interesting is that I used to wonder about that when I was coming up, and I had brothers and they were all into bodybuilding and that kind of thing. And I used to wonder with their bodybuilding magazines, like, who is this guy Joe Weider, and how did he ever look that good when he looked so frail in all of the photos that were in the magazine? I say all of that to circle right back to mental health and trauma and generational trauma. We've seen things like this before, where a person of the other persuasion comes along, sees something of value in an African American, and then takes it. Not only just takes it, but then claims it as their own, as if that was theirs naturally, and it wasn't. It was quite disheartening to hear how somebody could steal your very image. In the case of Robbie Robinson, having to pose for a clay figure to be made of him, only to have it stolen at the day when it was being revealed by Joe Weider. It made me think about the pyramids and what happened there. I'd always heard stories about the fact that the pyramids were built by Black people, not by any other race of people, and that certain people were offended when they saw an African nose on the face of the Sphinx and then shot it off, used the cannon to blow off the nose off the Sphinx so that the evidence of it being based on a Black person and a Black entity would not be seen. It makes you think about, if you've always had to be a person who's had to hide who you are, have your image stolen from you, your land, your culture, whatever it is, it has an effect on the mental health of people, and then it filters into body health and spirit health. When I talk about the fact that we can take full control of our life by what we choose to put at the end of our fork, it's talking about your mind, your memory, your mental health, your physical health, and your spiritual health. All of that is determined, a lot of that is determined by what you're eating. If you're not eating real food, then you have a harder time getting rid of the stresses and changing your epigenetics. The amazing thing about the story of Robbie Robinson that I want to bring to your attention is not just the fact that he's almost 80 years old and looks amazing. The fact is his mentality, his way of thinking, his mindset is so positive and so strong. And he actually spoke out. He shared an experience where he spoke out against the things that were happening, the unfair practices that were happening in the International Federation of Bodybuilders back in the 1970s. He was suspended. So he ended up leaving the United States and going overseas to compete there, where he wouldn't have any issues with racism as much as he had in the United States. To see his story come full circle, where he's working out in present day with Arnold Schwarzenegger, and the two of them are at least friendly. It's very interesting to show the mental strength and fortitude of a man, of an African American man called Robbie Robinson, to be able to put up with all of the racism, all of the unfairness, all of the prejudice in the United States in a sport that he was not only gifted at, but he was a hard worker in. To see that he's let it go and has forgiven people and has moved forward with his life is a testament to mental strength. With African Americans having to undergo so much prejudice and racism, there is an attitude that is absolutely imperative to survive, and that is being able to have the right mindset and support it with the food that you eat. It's very important to make sure that we're giving ourselves a fighting chance to withstand all of the stresses. If you have any questions about generational trauma and epigenetics and how that affects mental health and physical health, then please comment down below.